Ari and Alison Phillips have joined us with their take on some of the stories making the headlines. Wonderfully hot day yesterday. Did you enjoy the conditions?
It was beautiful yesterday and today.
Yes.
I don't want to get you too excited. I was in my shorts in the garden.
Oh, no.
I know.
We've peaked.
I know,
I think we've
so
peaked
soon.
at that point. Nick
Well,
Ferrari
we
in
were
shorts.
enjoying the hot weather. Over in Spain and Portugal, with their hot weather they were contending with, a blackout as well. 90% of the power has since been restored, but it seemed like an extraordinary thing, Nick, when you think about the conditions that we saw yesterday, this power cut. Seemingly, they're not really sure how it's happened yet or what it was.
No, investigations are going on even as we speak. Around 60 million people across what's called the Iberian Peninsula. You and I know it as Spain and Portugal. People were on their metro, the underground trains. I think we just saw they had to be led to safety. Offices closed down. And then there was a run on the shops. They were buying something. Now, this is very much in my world. They were buying battery-powered radios. Do you remember those batteries? And there were none to be had. Madrid sold out of battery-powered radio. Obviously, water went, toilet rolls, cereals and those sort of foods. As you rightly say, investigation going on in both countries, but power has come back. It is Europe's biggest ever power blackout, ever.
60 million people left without power. And some of the things that Nick said, we saw that footage in the underground, the metro. But if you were in a lift,
yes,
you got stuck in the lift because the power just went.
Yeah, so they had firefighters going in to get people out of lifts. They had trains that were stuck in the middle of the countryside. And I think we can all forget how much everything is dependent on electricity. So people's mobile phone batteries, when they went, then they weren't able to recharge them. So they couldn't work their contactless cards, and then even some of the cash point machines weren't working as well. So everything goes when the power goes.
I mean, Martin, we were talking. Martin Lewis is here with us today, and we were talking earlier about energy and making sure you're trying to swap. Is it demand on the grid that causes this sort of power cut at a time when there's that much heat as well?
Nobody yet knows why there was a power cut. They've said it wasn't a cyber attack, which I think was one of the things that was being considered. And they're going to have to wait for the investigation to come through. But look, energy security is a big issue in all Western countries. It's one of the reasons we pay so much is that the regulator forces companies to buy ahead to keep a level of energy supply going through so that we don't get those blackouts. And, you know, it's as much as I remember there was a danger of it a few years ago. And I think I was on here suggesting people, you don't turn your drying machine or your washing machine on between 4 and 9 at night. Not because it'll save you money, but just because it reduces peak demands. Sensible precautions everyone should really think about, because it's not just power outages. You know, first thing to say is banks go down where your app doesn't work and you can't make payments. So it's always worth having a little bit of cash, because that was one of the issues that was going on in Spain yesterday. A torch and some spare batteries in your house, because we get power cuts for normal reasons. You know, floods and weather incidents can cause those types of power cuts. A little bit of tin food, a little bit of water always kept stocked up is useful. A wind-up radio. And in this modern world, the other thing that I would always suggest is, I mean, and obviously if you don't have the money to do this, you don't, is to have a power bank to charge your mobile phone that's always fully charged in your house. Because if the worst comes to the worst, you plug that in, that gives you a torch and it gives you the radio and it gives you some form of communication with other people. So those are all actually sensible things that we should have right now. Hopefully, much as when I talk about travel insurance or home insurance, these are policies I'm suggesting how people get them and hope they'll never pay out. I hope none of these will ever be needed either. But it isn't unsensible to have those things.
Do you have any of those things, Nick, ready to go?
I've got Rioja. Because I've got a healthy supply. I thought he said wine. Yeah, that's got my...
It's the power bank. That's your power bank.
I don't have massive supplies. I mean, I might have a bottle of water kicking around, but that and a vodka, we'll get through.
Our boys are similar age. My boys are similar age to yours, I think, Alison. My boy, the advent of power banks in our house, because they go off to festivals and things, has become a thing. So that's something that we would have, and I did think about that yesterday, so at least we'd be able to plug our phones in.
If you've got them fully charged.
It depends how big they are and how expensive they are and how much they store.
Fairly decent one for about £20, I think.
Oh, OK.
But I would ordinarily have thought of all this sort of stuff was a bit sort of extremist and we don't need to do this. But when that happened yesterday, I did think we are much more vulnerable, perhaps, than we realise. And that maybe we do need to think. And the other thing I wondered is, like, is there a well anywhere near where I live, or is there a generator? Could these things be shared in local communities?
A well?
Yeah, well, so because they weren't able to get water, the people weren't able to get water in some places yesterday.
Go around his for a Rioja. You'll be all right.
Is there a well?
But who knows?
Of course there's not a bloody well. There are wells dotted around England.
But in which case there ought to be. Don't you think there may be?
You know what you can do?
All
Start
right, Jack
digging
and
now.
Jill.
Start digging now, Jill.
Right, I'm going to go home to dig my own well.
Okay.
Just think how much in demand you'd be as well. Then who'd be laughing?
He won't be getting any water.
No, I know.
Not even a drop.
No.
Let's move on to a more serious story. The Domestic Abuse Commissioner has stated that all primary school children should be taught about domestic abuse after a landmark survey found that thousands of children are being forced to suffer violence in the home due to lack of funding. It's distressing, isn't it?
It is. It's really upsetting. So the numbers are 800,000 children they're saying were victims of domestic violence now because they've changed the way that this is described. So that if you're a young person and you've witnessed domestic violence, they're saying that this now makes you a victim, which of course it does because the effects of that can last an entire lifetime.
Yeah.
So that kind of works out about one child in every class, pretty much. Yeah. And you know, friends of mine that work within teaching and teaching assistants say that this is quite a common occurrence, that you've got children who've witnessed the most awful things. So absolutely, I think it has to be spoken about in schools, not in an age-appropriate way.
Exactly.
That's the point, isn't it?
Yeah,
and but it doesn't need to terrify them. It just also quite often needs to sort of show young people what's normal.
A fair few viewers have got in touch with this, Nick. Would you be interested to get your points? I'll give you two different thoughts. Amy says children are taught in school about kind hands, etc. That is enough for their age. They know what's kind and what's nice and what isn't. But then Erin says a lot of kids in those situations won't realise it's not normal. So, yes, it should be taught. If it saves even one family, it's worth it.
Totally with Alison on this. It must be age-appropriate. You don't want to frighten 4- and 5-year-olds. But what shocks me is the previous government, and there are many things you could lay at its door, there have been such cuts in funding, if you read into the story, more than 50% of these centres don't have enough money to help to these young children. And you look at the current government, they've now been in for getting on for 9-10 months. The funding has to be found. If we are not looking after primary school-aged children who are victims of this abuse, if the centres don't have enough funding under the previous watch, they're not getting enough funding under the current watch, that is where I think all the attention should be focused.
And what Alison actually said about what a little one would consider normal, we have to teach them that that's not normal and not to be accepted.
And if you've grown up in a home where there is constantly violence, it's very hard to see what... It doesn't have to be like that.
Yeah.
In the interview, Dame Nicole Jacobs said that the forthcoming spending review was a critical test of Sir Keir Starmer's commitment to tackling violence against women and children. The Prime Minister has pledged to halve rates of violence against women and girls within a decade.
I think the number that jumps out for your viewers is 800,000 children we're talking about. Every single person watching this show would agree this is something that has to be tackled. It's not fair. It has to be age-appropriate. Previous administrations have failed on this. Let's hope that this one realises the significance of what the commissioner in this area is calling for.
But we are laying more things, Alison, on teachers to have to deal with as well. I absolutely agree. It's hugely important. But amongst everything else that they're doing now, they're going to have to...
These are specialist centres as well that we're not funding.
No, that's true. And I think teaching about this is another job for teachers. But at the moment, they're already having to pick up the pieces of children with all that emotional damage.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. You're going to stay with us a little bit longer and we'll talk some more stories. Let's talk the cost of children's parties. I'm actually about to do one.
Have you got a birthday party?
A 7-year-old birthday party coming up in May.
And is the budget excessive?
It's not that the budget is excessive, it's just it kind of almost has to be a bit because at 7 you invite the whole class and
Everyone
I don't want to leave anybody out. And so it's all of that. According to a new survey, a children's birthday party now costs an average of £524, including decorations, venue hire, food and entertainment. Did you always do the same with your boys? Did you always invite everybody?
I think you have to up until, I suppose, they get to about year 5 or something. And then it sort of goes into smaller groups. But but by the time you've hired somewhere at one of those horrendous jumping, bouncing places...
Inflator Nation.
If that's the ones. Or then you can... They're like 150 quid, something like that. And then you can sort of a few pizzas. I mean, so you don't necessarily have to be doing anything particularly flash, but that is just too much money. And I think what this report shows is that 51% of low-income families can't afford it. And then there's this terrible sort of situation where you have some children in the class whose families, cannot afford to do that. So I think there is this idea that, particularly if you've got a summer birthday, if you can go back to just, like, letting them all sort of go to the park and, a few sandwiches, great. But otherwise it can become very expensive.
Or maybe doubling up. Sometimes that's a good way of doing it as well, taking 2 families, because you're all in the same class anyway.
Yeah, well, what Alison's not telling you is when one of her children was very young, they decided they'd go and hunt for a wishing well. So they all... she read a book and they wandered around the Hertfordshire countryside or wherever you are looking for a wishing well.
And they enjoyed it.
And it was very cheap. This is awful, and it is the one-upmanship, isn't it?
It is.
And I mean, I'm trying... Look, it's a long time. What do you imagine your 7-year-old will remember? Probably whatever gifts they get. They won't necessarily remember where they were jumping up and down. But then if all their little mates had the castles or whatever else, you're locked in it, aren't you?
It is
The
difficult.
best party the boys ever had, and it's the one that they still remember now, was a party in the park near where we live, with some friends, and Annie just got a load of squeezy cream, put them on plate, and they ran around flinging it at each other.
Oh.
That's the one they still
Perfect.
talk about now, and it wasn't going to the flip out, it wasn't going to the go-karting, which they loved as well, and we were able to do, but it was the party where they were just running around the park, chucking squeezy cream at each other.
But the problem is,
face.
it isn't always like this.
No.
That sounds
That's
perfect.
the
It
other
was
problem.
that was
Like,
nice.
you have to turn around and go, most of the time it's grey and rainy.
So you need to be inside
what's
somewhere.
the plan B? Yeah.
The trouble is, they're still doing it in their early 20s.
They actually haven't.
Just
There go the shepherd kids again.
Here's the next story for you. Alison, have you ever, while being fully employed, cheated on your employer by having a little side hustle?
I don't think so. They're calling this how do you say that? Polygamous.
Like being polygamous.
Polygamous. And there's some incredible stories, particularly, I think, in a lot of local authorities, where people are saying that they're doing a job, but because they're working from home, they are also working for somebody else at the same time. And a few of these people have been caught out on Zoom calls answering the phone to a completely different person. Ooh. So, no, I don't think I've done it. And I think it is also fraud, and you can be investigated for it.
So, Nick, we're...
By our very nature.
Yes, we're freelance, so you have a short-term contract, and you often have more than one job at the same time, so it's not unusual for us. Have you got friends that have worked full-time somewhere, though, and sort of just got a little something going on the side?
Yes, I think I have, but normally it's something like it might be, as one of your colleagues was saying, perhaps, is it called Vintage, where you sell like vintage clothing or something like that? I think that is probably acceptable. Where I think you're stretching is the story that Alison's just outlined there, where you might be working for a local authority, you might be working for an employer or whatever, and you're actually devoting... It's not just a little, as I think you call it, side hustle. It's like... And I think that's wrong. But the gig that we're in, we are... You know, I'm here and I'm at LBC and I write a newspaper column, so it's not unknown for us.
No.
Martin, I wonder what you made of this story.
Well, look, I mean, I've been writing about how people can boost their income with side hustles for years. The issue here is whether it's a dishonest one or not. I mean, the first thing people need to be aware of are you contractually allowed to work for somebody else? And many contracts will say you can't, especially if it's a competitor. So but the main story that everyone's going about, which will be a small number of people, is someone having 3 jobs at 3 different councils, thinking they're all full-time, working from home and being all of them. I think that's very different to, you know, some of the stuff we talk about, you know, whether it says, you know, making money from playing a game on a mobile phone or doing surveys or making extra money by doing competitions and entering those. I mean, ultimately, though, people have to be careful. If you're paid to do a job of work and you're paid for hours or you're paid for productivity, then if you don't do that, you can expect to lose your job. And worse, if you have a contract that says you can't work for somebody else and then you can expect potentially to be sued if you don't do so. So people need to be careful. There's nothing wrong with side hustles. There's nothing wrong with boosting your income. But you need to understand what your contractual obligations are with your employer.
The latest report by the National Fraud Initiative, set up by the government to detect fraud in private and public sector, identified 23 cases in a recent pilot of London boroughs and discovered £500,000 of overpaid salaries over a period of a few months. So there are some people that are taking advantage of it.
And also, the concern is that clearly they're not having to work very hard. I mean, they shouldn't really have enough time to be able to work for somebody else full-time, should they?
If you're viewers now thinking I've tried to ring the local authority to sort out my road, sorry, not the road, sort out a garden bin or whatever it might be. You want a recycling bin, and you can't get the phone answered and you can't get that bin, and you hear this, you're going to be pretty ticked off.
Yeah, you would be, for sure.
You would.
OK, let's talk weddings. We've got one of those coming up.
You have, yes.
We've got one of those coming up. Will yours have drinks available?
What do you think? What do you think? Yes.
He's got a Rioja well in his back garden.
There will be the finest South of French rosé you can imagine. Will be served from dawn till dusk. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's part of the fun.
Well, apparently more young adults are choosing an alcohol-free celebration instead.
I'm not a young adult.
No.
I've been to a booze-free wedding. One of my friends, Muslim, a few years back, and we all knew it was going to be booze-free, and it was absolutely wonderful. There was one of our colleagues, though, who was the editor of the then news programme that I worked on, who was notorious, who had managed to find a little special way of getting a drink in every now and again. So he was having a drink while everyone was sitting around enjoying it, and it was very noticeable by the end of the evening that he hadn't been indulging in it. But you know what was lovely? Actually, once you get into the spirit of it, you know, our instinct is always a glass of champagne and celebration.
Yes.
But actually, it was a really wonderful way of celebrating the marriage, the species, the whole experience, because we were all in the same boat.
Yeah. And you can enjoy yourself without drinking. You don't have to drink to enjoy yourself. But the only thing I worry about this is if the change is because people are worried about losing their inhibitions. I think that's sad, because I think one of the great things about weddings and funerals almost is that you have a few drinks and you're just truly yourself.
You let your hair down.
At a funeral?
Yes.
Oh, I
A
went
real
to a fabulous
celebration of
funeral
life.
for my friend's father a few months ago, and it was brilliant. Seeing all the family together, by the end of it, it was a really wonderful celebration of this guy's life.
It's the same, but weddings, it's like the little ones to the older ones, to grandma and granddad, having a bit of a dance as well. But this poll says that almost a third of UK adults aged 18 to 34 will toast the bride and groom with a soft drink this summer.
OK.
I quite like that, Martin. What do you think?
Well, look, I'm not a big drinker. I drink maybe once or twice a year, which is more than I used to. It used to be every couple of years. And I often go to weddings and I don't drink because I don't particularly like it and it's not what I do. And it's interesting, the narrative, you forgive me, the narrative coming from that table is if you don't drink, you can't have a good time. Well, I think the younger people are saying that's not necessarily true.
Agreed.
And it's a different way of behaving and you might not want to lose some of those inhibitions, but you can still party and go on and shout and cheer. I think society is changing and maybe I'm just, even though I'm 53, I should be in that younger age category.
Here's a question for all of you then.
Nearly 53.
Do you prefer a dad bod? Ollie Mers, wonderful Ollie, who's been training really, really hard, has sparked a debate amongst men and women by posting online his body transformation over 12 weeks. Ollie went from Ollie on the left to Ollie on the right. The question is, and he put a poll up, or a poll went up, as to whether you prefer Ollie on the left or Ollie on the right. Clearly has worked incredibly hard, really disciplined over his nutrition. He looks exceptionally strong and healthy. Alison, are you for Ollie on the left or Ollie on the right?
Ollie on the left.
You're Ollie on the left.
I think the one on the right is just a little bit too hard, a little too
Firm. You don't like the firm?
No, I think it's a bit... No, too hard.
Nick, Ollie on the left, Ollie on the right?
Top bloke, because he works at the same radio group. Lovely, lovely guy.
He's amazing.
I'm going to... Oh, he really is a top bloke. I'm going to go for, understandably, Ollie on the left, and hopefully so would the woman in my life, because otherwise we can forget about August.
It's a 12-week transformation, Nick. When's the wedding?
That would be August, Ben.
Well, hold on a sec.
I could do double that.
Get Ollie in. Let's get Nick on a...
Is it all right if I start now?
Kat, what do you think?
You know what? As long as he's healthy, I don't actually mind either. But I do think he looks younger on the left too.
Out of
Do you?
4,900...
Yeah, I think he looks younger on the left than on the right.
4,900 votes, 26% of women say they prefer the look of Ollie on the left. 7% of women preferring it after. This differs to the men. 24% say they prefer Ollie on the right. 43% preferred Ollie on the right. 4% before. Martin, what do you think? Ollie on the left, Ollie on the right?
The problem is the one on the left, calling that a dad bod. I mean, he's in pretty good shape on the left.
Yes,
That's not a dad bod. I mean, I exercise every day and I don't quite look that good. So, I mean, I'd be quite happy with that. On the right, it's just, he looks like he's done one of those get rid of your body fat type diets where he's gone nutrition, he's gone no food, he's been just eating rice, as if he's going into a bodybuilding contest. And that's quite a specific type of look. So I'm on the left, but I'm not, I think it's the problem is calling on the left a dad bod. I'm not sure that's what they mean by dad. There's no beer belly there, is there? That's not what they mean by
comparison. I think he looks sensational. He is, as you say, a wonderful guy, and I think he looks sensational on the right. I know how, and interestingly, his nutrition, as strict as he would have been, having done this myself, I know how much he would have been eating to get to that lean muscle. You can see the lean muscle in his biceps and across his shoulders. He would have been eating, probably consuming more calories, but just specific protein calories rather than on the left.
So what's he eating? Chicken?
So lots of protein. He would be and stripping out a lot of the other stuff that he doesn't.
And he's married to a bodybuilder as well,
exactly.
which I think must probably help.
Yes,
Maybe strip back a bit of the apple.
Nick, apparently his pre-wedding diet was chicken breast and rioja, so you'll be fine.
Thanks, Marty. We're in.
So if you'd like to follow Nick's body transformation, scan the QR code right now. We're going to get the before and after pictures sorted.
Thank you,
Thank you
guys.
both for
Thank
listening.
you.
Thank you for visiting our This Morning YouTube channel. We upload tons of new content every single day. So hit the subscribe button, like all the videos, and don't miss out. We'll see you in the morning.